Good morning, everybody. The New Jersey Educational Facilities Authority gave notice of the time, place, and date of this meeting by email on June 20th, 2023 to the Star Ledger, the Times of Trenton, the Secretary of State, and by posting the notice at the offices of the authority in Princeton, New Jersey, and on the authority's website. Pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act, a resolution must be passed by the New Jersey Educational Facilities Authority in order to hold a session from which the public is excluded. Cheryl, would you please read the roll?
Josh Hodis,
Here.
Ridgely Hutchinson,
Here.
Luis Rodriguez,
Yeah.
Brian Feeney,
Here.
Dr. Bridges. And I see Dr. Bridges has joined the call.
Here.
Thank you. We also have this morning, Josh on the call, Sam Kovac-Orr from the Governor's Authorities Unit. We have Brian McGarry from the Attorney General's Office, Steve Nelson, Ellen Yang, Brian Sutkus, Carl McDonald, and Rebecca Crespo from the Authority. Joining us today from Montclair State University, I believe I saw on the line Ben Durant. He is the Chief Operating Officer and Senior Vice President. We also have Michael Galvin, Interim Vice President for Finance and Treasurer. And I believe I saw Kelly Barros, Assistant Treasurer. We also have Jim Fearon from Dilworth Paxson, who serves as bond counsel to the authority on the Montclair State University matter, and Rob Kettner, Josh Lassiter, and Will Cuthbertson from First Trion Advisors, financial advisor to Montclair State University. Finally, joining us from Moody's Investor Service this morning is Susan Schaffer. Welcome back, Susan, and Patrick Ronk. That's what I have at this point, Josh.
Great, thanks so much. Now I'd like to ask everyone to please turn to tab 1. I'd like to request a motion approving the minutes of the January 23rd, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Rich, second by Lou. Cheryl, please read the roll.
Josh Hodis,
Yes.
Ridgely Hutchinson,
Yes.
Luis Rodriguez,
Yes.
Brian Feeney,
Yes.
Dr. Bridges.
Yes.
All in favor.
Great, thank you. Now I'd like to hand it over to Cheryl to provide the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Josh. Just a few things this morning. You'll recall that at our special meeting just a couple of weeks ago on February 6th, the members approved 2 resolutions for 3 series of bonds on behalf of Princeton University. The first resolution was for the 2024 Series A bonds and authorized the issuance of new money revenue bonds for Princeton University in an amount not to exceed $1 billion. That transaction will be pricing competitively tomorrow morning, so we're looking forward to that. The Series B and C resolutions authorized the issuance of new money revenue bonds and refunding bonds for the university in an amount not to exceed $673 million. Those bonds were successfully sold on a negotiated basis last Wednesday, February 21st. It's a very successful sale. The $500 million Series B new money bonds priced with a true interest cost of 4.34%. The $158 million Series C refunding bonds priced with a true interest cost of 3.49%. I think importantly, the Series C refunding bonds generated net present value savings of $14.6 million, or 8.4% of refunded bonds for Princeton University. So all in all, it was very, very successful pricing for the Bs and Cs. And, we're looking forward to tomorrow. The transaction closings for the A, Bs, and Cs are anticipated for some time in March and April. I think at that time, Steve will have more details on these financings that he will be able to report up to the board. And he'll do that through his bond sale summaries. So moving on, as I reported last January, the authority's office lease expires in December of this year, and staff has been working with the authority's realtor, Fennelly Associates, to identify space or renewal options in our current space. To date, we have considered several properties and conducted site visits at a number of them. We have solicited bids and received proposals and are continuing to evaluate the authority's options in light of those proposals. Staff is working with our vice chair, Ridgely Hutchinson, so thank you, Ridgely, who we are meeting with later this afternoon to review an analysis of the proposals received so far. We are targeting the March 26th board meeting to bring a recommendation before you for consideration. And that concludes my report this morning, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Cheryl. Anybody have any questions for Cheryl? Great, thanks, Cheryl. And we're going to move on to tab 2. Resolution of the New Jersey Educational Facilities Authority authorizing the issuance of revenue refunding bonds, Montclair State University issue, Series 2024A. I'd like to ask Carl to please report on the resolution.
Thank you, Josh. Today, the members are being asked to approve a resolution authorizing the issuance of NJEFA revenue refunding bonds issued on behalf of Montclair State University Series 2024A via a negotiated sale in an amount not to exceed $198 million. The bonds are being issued to finance a project consisting of the refunding of all or a portion of the authority's outstanding revenue bonds, Montclair State University issue Series 2014A, the refunding of all of the principal, sinking fund installment, and interest requirements with respect to the authority's outstanding revenue bonds, Bloomfield College and Seminary issue, Series 2013 Series A, pay the cost of refunding of all the outstanding principal balances of 2 Bloomfield College outstanding bank loans, which includes, if applicable, reimbursement to the university for any payments made to retire the mortgage loans in anticipation of the issuance of the Series 2024 bonds. And also, lastly, to pay certain costs of issuance incidental to the issuance of the sale and the delivery of the bonds. In accordance with its policies and procedures, the authority distributed and evaluated an RFP for underwriter services. Based on the results of this evaluation, the authority recommends appointing Goldman Sachs & Co. LLC to serve as senior manager. U.S. Bank Trust Company will serve as trustee on the transaction, and the Bank of New York Mellon will also serve as escrow agent. Dilworth Paxson LLC has been selected to serve as bond counsel. At this time, I would like to ask James Fearon of Dilworth Paxson, who is bond counsel on this transaction, to formally present the resolution.
Very good. Thank you, Carl. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me because I am impossible to actually fix anything on my end. I am too old for this stuff. So as Carl noted, the resolution authorizes the issuance of $198 million, up to $198 million of refunding bonds for the purposes that Carl had outlined. The bond resolution contains an extensive history of the prior bond issuances and the projects that are being refinanced by this issue. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about those particular projects. And also by way of background, as you are already aware, Bloomfield College was merged with and into an operating subsidiary of the university in June of last year. And during the transitional period that followed and is continuing today, that subsidiary continues to operate as a nonprofit 501c3 entity whose sole corporate member is the university. It's expected that the full merger will be completed by June 30th of this year, subject to the receipt of regulatory and other approvals, at which time all of the assets that we're now refinancing will be owned by Montclair State University directly, not the hodgepodge that we currently have. The bonds are expected to be issued as a single series of fixed rate tax-exempt bonds, as Carl had noted. The resolution authorizes the issuance of those bonds subject to the following parameters, some of which Carl had already noted. Principal amount not to exceed $198 million, true interest cost not to exceed 6%, a final maturity date of not later than July 1 of 2049, and a redemption premium not to exceed 5% if tax exempt, with allowance for a higher make-whole premium if the bonds are issued on a taxable basis. The resolution authorizes the execution and delivery of documents under a loan agreement structure, which has been developed to replace the lease agreement structure that had historically been used for the authority's state college financings. The documents that are being approved by this resolution include the following: a trust indenture between the authority and the appointed bond trustee, a loan agreement between the authority and the university, an escrow deposit agreement between the authority and the appointed escrow agent, and a continuing disclosure agreement between the university and the trustee acting its role as dissemination agent. The resolution authorizes the negotiated sale of the bonds to Goldman Sachs & Co., LLC, or a syndicate led by that firm. In addition, the resolution authorizes the execution and delivery of a bond purchase agreement between the authority and the underwriters in substantially the form provided, subject to a maximum underwriting compensation of $3.50 per $1,000 principal amount of bonds issued. The resolution also approves the circulation of a preliminary official statement describing the bonds in substantially the form provided, as well as a final official statement to reflect the final pricing terms. The resolution also authorizes authority officers to appoint U.S. Bank Trust Company National Association to serve as trustee for the Series 2024A bonds, and to appoint the Bank of New York Mellon to serve as escrow agent for the refunded Series 2014A bonds. Finally, the resolution authorizes authority staff and professionals to take additional actions incidental to the offering, sale, and issuance of the bonds, including, among other things, provisions relating to the DTC book entry system, the investment of bond proceeds, the procurement of escrow investments, either through open market securities or the purchase of U.S. Treasury slugs, and the solicitation of bond insurance, should it be deemed necessary or desirable in order to market the bonds. And with all that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, I've got an overarching question, and I
Sure.
don't know if this is best answered by Jim or by Ben, but my main question is, how does this refinancing impact the short-term debt service, annual debt service, and how does it impact the long-term debt outlook for the institution? Just making sure we're always concerned about, given the heightened attention toward accountability in higher education. We're always concerned about institutions not necessarily overextending themselves. I think this might, well, we are concerned about institutions overextending themselves, but I understand that this is probably consolidating things and making it more concise for Montclair, but just want to have a good understanding as to the general impact long term.
Well, this is a refunding of approximately $180 million worth of debt. 30 million of that is Bloomfield, and 150 million roughly is Montclair. But basically, to get to the point, this will produce a great savings opportunity for us. The net present value savings of this transaction is about 14%. The average annual cash flow savings is approximately 1.5 million. So this savings really helps our short and long-term outlook, and in particular, the long-term outlook, because as you know, we'll be issuing new debt within the next year for a new science center and a Wi-Fi project. So savings from this refunding will net against the cost of the new debt and basically lower our annual debt service payments that we would have made without having the benefit of this refunding savings.
Okay, good. I mean, I think this would allow you to reduce your annual debt service.
Right.
Does it stretch it out further?
No, it keeps the same terms.
Okay. Okay.
The other thing I just wanted to note, and just to give credit to our financial advisor, when we were initially looking to do this refunding, we were focused only on the Bloomfield debt because the interest rate environment wasn't conducive to refunding our 2014 A bonds. But our financial advisor, anticipating that the market could change, put together an RFP with enough flexibility in it so that we could add in the 2014 bonds if the market environment improved such that it would be to our benefit to do so. And it did improve. And so we were able to layer in the 2014A refunding along with the Bloomfield refunding, and we're getting substantial savings. So just wanted to acknowledge the good work of our financial advisors and the rest of the team that's been working on this.
Good. That concludes my questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Any other questions?
Josh,
Yes,
Before you move on, I was trying to find an appropriate moment for this. I'm
Sure.
used from this matter. So the roll call will have to be handed over to Steve. I have a conflict with a personal relationship over at the bond counsel firm Dillon.
great. Thank you for letting us know.
Yep.
I'll now read the resolution. A resolution of the New Jersey Educational Facilities Authority authorizing the issuance of revenue refunding bonds, Montclair State University issue, Series 2024A. Like to request a motion approving the resolution.
So move, Lewis.
Moved by Lewis. Is there a second?
Second, Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Steve, please read the roll.
Sure. Josh Otis,
Yes.
Ridgely Hutchinson,
Yes.
Luis Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ryan Feeney,
Yes.
Dr. Bridges.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Great, thank you. Now I ask everyone to please turn to tab 3 for a report on the sale of NJEFA revenue bonds, Higher Education Facilities Trust Fund issue, Series 2024. I'd like to ask Rebecca to please provide the report.
Thanks, Josh. On January 25th, the authority closed its $78,200,000 Higher Education Facilities Trust Fund Series 2024 issue. The bonds were issued to provide funds to make grants to certain public and private institutions of higher education in the state for the purpose of paying the cost or a portion of the cost of construction, reconstruction, development, extension, and improvement of certain instructional, laboratory, communication, and research facilities in accordance with the Trust Fund Act, as well as paying costs of issuing the bonds. The bonds were sold on a competitive basis on January 9th. BofA Securities was the successful bidder for the bonds, which achieved a true interest cost of 3% and have a final maturity of June 15th, 2038. The bonds rated A2 by Moody's, A- by S&P, and A by Fitch. Other financing professionals included Chiesa, who served as bond counsel, and Acacia Financial Group, who served as financial advisor to the state. If the members have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them at this time.
Thanks, Rebecca. Any questions for Rebecca? Hearing none, we're going to turn to tab 4 and stick with Rebecca for a report on the sale of the NJEFA Revenue Bonds Higher Education Technology Infrastructure Fund issues Series 2024.
Thanks, Josh. On January 25th, the authority closed its $28,825,000 Higher Education Technology Infrastructure Fund Series 2024 issue. The bonds were issued to provide funds to make grants to certain public and private institutions of higher education for the purpose of paying the cost or a portion of the cost of certain technology infrastructure projects authorized in accordance with the Technology Infrastructure Fund Act, as well as paying the cost of issuing the bonds. The bonds were sold on a competitive basis on January 9th. Morgan Stanley was a successful bidder for the bonds, which achieved a true interest cost of 2.59% and have a final maturity of June 1st, 2034. The bonds rated A2 by Moody's, A- by S&P, and A by Fitch. Other financing professionals included Chiesa, who served as bond counsel, and Acacia Financial Group, who served as financial advisor to the state. If the members have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Thanks again, Rebecca. Anybody with any questions for Rebecca? Great. Thank you again, Rebecca. I'd now like to turn the presentation over to Susan from Moody's Investor Services for their 2024 Higher Education Outlook.
Great, thank you. Let me just get my screen up here. Oops. Don't think I can hide your faces on my other screen. Oh, there we go. Okay, great. So are y'all seeing the screen that says New Jersey Higher Education Overview? Yes? Great. So hi again, I'm Susan Schaefer from Moody's. I've spoken with y'all about this for a number of years, and I'm joined by my colleague Patrick Ronk, who also has joined for at least 1, maybe 2 years. But between the two of us, we cover, on behalf of Moody's, we cover all of the higher education institutions in New Jersey that we rate, which is the 4-year publics, and then a couple of the privates, and we'll show y'all a list of that a little bit later in the presentation. But what we're going to do is talk first about just some big topics in higher education and a couple of things that we've pulled out that are specific to New Jersey in terms of just overall trends. And then Patrick is going to talk a little bit more specifically about the New Jersey public institutions, giving some data that's actually fiscal 22, not fiscal 23, since we don't have all of the 23 audits. And we're happy to answer questions if y'all want to ask them as we go through this, or if you want to hold them to the end, either is okay with us. So just as a reminder, higher education is a really highly rated sector, despite all the pressures that we've had over the past couple of years. We still have, a lot of almost all of our issuers, of which we rate about 450, which is almost all of the public debt. And it is almost all of the public institutions. What we do not rate are a bunch of very small private schools that a lot of which just don't have public debt or are just not rated by Moody's. So this really does cover, almost the entire U.S. higher education sector, and almost all are above investment grade. So the line for, investment grade to below investment grade is kind of here between this Baa3 and the Ba1. So just really a handful of below investment grade credits, one of which y'all will see in a few minutes is one of the public universities in the state of New Jersey. For public universities, the median tends to be around this A1, Baa3, A1, A2. The private's a little bit higher here, but then privates are also most of these below investment grade credits. And what I would say in general, and this is very similar to what we said last year, about 20% of the sector just is continuing to do really, really well. This was the part of the sector that, barely missed a beat during the pandemic, has super strong student market, probably has a lot of cash in the bank or a lot of investments, and just a lot of financial flexibility. And about half, maybe more than half, is just doing fine, having to make some tough decisions, but generally doing okay, maybe seeing some enrollment pressures, but things that are really in line with sector trends and maybe not super specific to them. And then, another 20 to 30% of the sector is really struggling. And these are places that were struggling before the pandemic and got a little boost from federal funds during the pandemic, and now those funds have run out. And, as Dr. Bridges just pointed out, lots of attention on the value of higher education. So it's just even harder for that part of the sector. And I would also say that we're starting to see some schools that are in the kind of middle part of the sector that previously had not seen challenges, that are starting to see some challenges post-pandemic that they didn't before. And those would probably be more in the private part of the sector where, schools that are not the most competitive, that are still, fairly expensive, even with tuition discounting, and perhaps parents and students are choosing public universities instead, or even some private schools that give more financial aid and are maybe even less competitive. Starting to see a little pressure there, but that's pretty fresh. So this year, after a negative outlook in the past, we actually went back to a stable outlook. I won't say that means everything is amazing and fantastic, but it does mean things are a little bit better than they have been in the past couple of years. So these are the EBITDA margins, which is a cash flow margin, which is the main thing that we use to look at operating performance. And you can see, it's still going to be lower than what it has been. These years here were really boosted by federal funds coming in that gave a lot of support. And then you can see last year where those funds ran out. So a big drop there in operating performance, and inflation still a big factor, not necessarily getting worse and perhaps getting a little bit better, but still really high prices for things. So going to continue to compress margins. And similarly, after not doing a lot of tuition increases during the pandemic, places are doing tuition increases, but having to moderate those in a lot of cases, because it's just what, the market can't handle really, really big increases. I wanted to show y'all as a kind of a reminder where revenue is coming from for schools and where it's coming from for public schools versus private schools. So while this doesn't apply to most of the schools in New Jersey, patient care is still a huge part of the sector. It's only about 15% of all of the universities that we rate actually have, you know, this healthcare component, but it's 25% of the revenue of the entire sector. So that's, you know, what that means. What's happening in healthcare is what's happening in higher education in a lot of places. I think we tend to think of just in general, you know, thinking of students as being the, you know, the biggest revenue driver, but it's really not. 30% at privates and 26% at public universities. These grants and contracts pie charts, which is kind of confusingly green on this chart and gray on this chart, that's research money. So largely federal funding, but not entirely. There's certainly some state and private funding there. And then you can see here, you know, very importantly from y'all's perspective, this 18% of state funding for public institutions. This is one of my favorite slides that we have been using in the past couple of years because it puts in everything that is really impacting enrollment right now. And I think, you know, I know y'all all read lots of news, as Patrick and I do, about things that are happening in higher education, and, you know, lots of things happening politically in different states, things happening, you know, at the national level. All of that isn't necessarily hitting actual performance yet, but those are things that will, you know, impact things more and more over time. Macroeconomic conditions certainly impacting where people are going to school, the types of choices they're making, and impacting enrollment, and which I'll show you a little bit some of the trends in parts of who's enrolling. But that's, you know, participation rates. Student preparedness is just going to be a bigger and bigger issue. And when we were initially talking about this, I think we were thinking about it so much of the students who were immediately going into college after the pandemic and their level of preparedness, and not thinking about it as much of, oh, the people who are in third grade and second grade who aren't getting the math skills that they are going to need, that are going to impact them, you know, 10 plus years from now. And so the pressures that that's putting on institutions to have greater student support services, to have more, you know, things in place for preparation for entering college. Admissions is still very different. Just this past week, we had some news coming of schools starting to put standardized test scores back in place after having waived them for the past few years. But admissions in general has changed a lot. That used to be my job, and I'm so happy it's not my job anymore, because you know, there are a lot of things in place that have impacted who is being admitted, how you're evaluating these applications, and then how these students are succeeding once they're in the institution. So this is one that we have made for y'all in New Jersey that we talk about with y'all probably every time we speak with y'all in these meetings, and then in the other conversations we have during the course of the year, which is the in and out migration of students. And so this is some data from the National Center for Education Statistics, and it's from 2020. They don't have it updated yet to show kind of post-pandemic, but I don't think this is going to be a surprise for y'all of just the out migration in New Jersey being really, really high. Y'all are a state that is highly recruited by surrounding states, other states across the country, for undergraduate enrollment. And I just thought it was interesting to look at how it compares to some of the other states, maybe some states that have put in some scholarship programs to try to keep people in state. So I'm thinking of New York having done that. And I can't say this is, you know, 100% contributable to that scholarship program, but that maybe that's, you know, impacted some decrease in migration there.
Susan, are you taking comments during this?
Absolutely. How you doing, Dr. Bridges?
I mean, I think I'm well. You know, as I told people, I've tried to educate people that the out migration thing is a bit of a red herring. When you look back at data over the last 60 years, this has been consistent for 60 years. Part of it is a result of lack of capacity within our network, not really a system of institutions. When you talk to the presidents, they would say that even if we could keep 10,000 students who graduate from high school each year, they will tell you they can't house them. They don't have the capacity. And so as a high income state with actually just recently the highest per capita income in the country as statewide with great schools, New Jersey is a prime target. Other states, I know this because of SHIO and another state said, oh yeah, we looked at New Jersey because we know you all can't accommodate all the students who want to go to college, who are college ready. And so yes, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts recruit heavily in New Jersey because they know that, we're a place that can't necessarily accommodate all the students who might even want to go to college. And then wealthy students also, which we have a lot of them, want to go to college out of state. They often want to go farther away. I talked to a group of high schoolers recently who said they didn't want to go to Rutgers because it felt like just high school 2.0. The whole high school class at Franklin High School, which is right close to New Brunswick. So I think that this is something that I don't see this changing anytime soon. We have a robust scholarship program where we offer more aid per student than any other state up until last year. I think one other state has surpassed us now, but we offer a ton of student aid, and I don't think this is going to change. So just context added there for you.
No, I appreciate that. And I agree. Those are really good points. And I think you're right that it'd be hard to change because the other places do not want to stop recruiting in New Jersey because they've got, traditions of recruiting in places and strong pipelines, and you've got, some attractive students there. Just something that has come up recently, and then this isn't anything that any of us necessarily can do much about at the moment, but FAFSA changes are causing a lot of kerfuffle in this year's admissions cycle, and the places that will probably be the most hurt by those are the places that, of course, have already been struggling with some other issues over the past few years. So some of the less competitive private schools, less selective public schools are places that may have even more challenge with that over the coming months than, as you would expect, the wealthier institutions, the most competitive public institutions. And this gets to in the past, what we've shared with y'all has been just the high school graduate enrollment, but this year I've actually put in the K through 12 enrollment, looking at the past years from 2017 to 2022 here on the left, and then looking at what will happen going forward so that we can just, kind of have an idea of increasing pressures in enrollment in the surrounding states around New Jersey. Didn't want to just talk about the challenges. We have two bright spots here. One is that international enrollment has started coming back, more so on the graduate student side, but I think that's, for a lot of the schools that we work with in New Jersey, that's great because they've been wanting to do some expansion of graduate programs. And then also some popping back up in the community college area, which so for the county colleges, there's just been so much pressure in those areas across the country. And so starting to see those get a little bit better slowly, but that's, another bright note. And then we also generally share state funding, and this is for 22. I know things looked better for 23, kind of across, not in every state, but across the board. But here's New Jersey, kind of in the middle of the pack here for public higher education appropriations. And with that, I'll turn it over to Patrick to talk about the New Jersey schools.
Thanks, Susan. Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick Ronk, an analyst on the higher ed team. I also like to mention on these that I'm a New Jersey native from Bridgewater and Raritan Borough in Central Jersey. But yeah, just to kick off and sort of set the stage. So the state of New Jersey's credit rating was upgraded to A1 stable in May of last year. And that's really a reflection of growing unrestricted fund balance at the state, strong employment gains throughout New Jersey, and the recent commitment to full actuarial pension contributions through fiscal 2024. And this is actually the second upgrade in about 2 years. So, frankly, the state of New Jersey's credit rating has generally been on the lower end of our state credit ratings. But 2 upgrades from A3 to A2 and then A2 to A1 in the past couple of years post-pandemic.
Patrick, quick question about that. Is that, I don't know how this is calculated, but could that potentially be, depending on how it's calculated, is it skewed by Princeton at all? Or is Princeton's size of their endowment and their rating? I mean, I know they're one of the few AAA schools.
Yeah, happy to answer that, Dr. Bridges. So this chart is the fund balance of the state of New Jersey as a whole, not just the universities. So
Okay.
no skew from New Jersey from Princeton on this one. But to your point, this is an overview slide of just the credit rating of the public and private universities in New Jersey. So you'll see Princeton there on the privates as AAA. To your point, and the Theological Seminary also AA1, pretty highly rated. And then the smaller private colleges in New Jersey, particularly Georgian Court and Rider, are 2 of our below investment grade issuers that Susan mentioned on that chart before. And then on the public side, generally public universities nationwide are more higher rated given the uplift from state appropriations and state aid. So you have Rutgers as the flagship, as the highest rated among New Jersey, followed by NJIT, and then a fair amount at the A2 level. And then we do have William Patterson University at BAA1. And then, as Susan mentioned, NJCU is our 1 below investment grade public university in New Jersey. Okay, jump to the next slide. So generally, the strengths of New Jersey publics, flat to slightly growing enrollment over the last year in particular. Dr. Bridges, to your point, serving a broad, both diverse racially, but also socioeconomically population in New Jersey, and then some good price setting power and net tuition revenue as a result of that. And we've also found over the years that our publics in New Jersey are generally adaptable to shifts in consumer demand or degree program demand, as well as being able to manage expenses and sort of be adaptable within their operating bases to just address economic headwinds, demand headwinds, demographic headwinds. And those challenges, they sort of persist as the high leverage, given the history of less capital support from the state of New Jersey, means a lot of our publics have to issue more debt. The demographics in the Northeast of New Jersey in terms of high school graduates are weakening. And, there's a lot of discussion about the demographic cliff, as I'm sure you're all aware. And then the pension pressure, which is, is also historically dragged down the state of New Jersey's credit rating, does weigh on the total adjusted debt figure of the NJ publics, and then generally thinner financial reserves and total wealth compared to medians nationwide of public universities, which we have some charts that we'll show you on that. So this is, as Susan mentioned, we have fiscal 2022 data, so it's a bit aged. New Jersey generally gets the university audits to us much later than a lot of our other universities nationwide. So we often have a data lag on how we compare New Jersey publics to their peers. So this is a full fiscal year behind, but you'll see that across the board, the total debt and total adjusted debt includes pensions as well as public-private partnership obligations, is a bit higher than the national median for public universities. Rutgers obviously having a pretty high debt load there, but really across the board, New Jersey publics having a bit more debt than the median in their sector. And, that then leads into a bit smaller annual debt service coverage compared to the sector median because of just higher annual debt service obligations, given the higher debt load, and a bit thinner operating performance generally compared to the sector overall. And then again, speaking to the point of sort of total cash investments and financial reserves, New Jersey publics having a bit thinner financial reserves compared to the national medians, both on a comparing wealth to total debt as well as adjusted debt basis is there. And then this is, again, the same thing. So just comparing total cash and investments to operating expenses. So annual expenses, a bit closer to the median on this one, but still across the board below sort of the national median for public universities that we look at. And then this is, as Susan mentioned, we look at sort of EBITDA cash flow margins as our key indicator of operating performance. And, a few publics are beating the median for, a few New Jersey publics are beating the median nationwide, particularly Montclair, Ramapo, Kane being a bit higher. But generally what we see for New Jersey publics is kind of break even operating performance year to year, and EBITDA margins that are a bit lower than the median. And then again, you'll see all the way on the right there, NJCU still continuing to struggle a bit on operating performance given their distressed enrollment situation. And then this is actually a metric where you prefer to be below the median. This is the age of plant, so kind of a proxy for age of campus infrastructure, the general kind of amount of deferred maintenance and campus buildings. And New Jersey publics have spent fairly well on the capital spending side, so have pretty modern, up-to-date campuses and are generally below that median age of plant number. You'll see, particularly Montclair, Kane, and Rowan, who have spent a lot on major campus infrastructure over the past 5 to 10 years, being a fair bit below that median age of plant. And then the sort of one slight caveat to that is that we've seen capital spending kind of dip a bit over the past couple of years. This could be for a number of reasons. It could be pandemic-related pauses, higher interest rates, supply chain issues. But, in fiscal 22, the capital spending across the board for New Jersey publics was a bit below the median in terms of investing in campus infrastructure, with, again, that exception being Rowan, which has, really been spending a lot on the capital side to update their campus and invest in strategic initiatives there.
And I got some information from our infrastructure and construction group yesterday that does a lot at state levels, but some of those things do trickle down into the higher education sector. And so it's a little of this kind of the same story as higher education of better, but not great still. Prices still really elevated, inflation up, 40% plus in construction cost over the past 2 years. So in some places, like basically a 20% increase per year. Supply chain definitely better, but things that are like complex electronics, very specialized equipment can have delays of sometimes up to 2 years. I was learning if they had not been ordered, a few years back. So places that put a pause on capital and didn't at least get in the queue for ordering things are going to have a delay in being able to complete some projects. Also for not necessarily the places that y'all are going to see coming for debt that y'all would need to approve, but just for places that do want to have some that are going to private markets instead of public markets, or affiliated foundations, or places that were interested in doing P3s. A little more strain in that market with not as much availability of direct financing from banks and from regional banks that are just not as keen on getting into that right now. I will say, having been at Moody's for about 10 years and having come to Moody's when the state of New Jersey was under a lot more credit pressure, it has really been nice over the past couple of years to have upgrades and positive things to talk about, and not to be constantly, going to every university, every public university in the state of New Jersey and having them have to go through all of their contingency planning with us. So that's been a nice change in the past couple of years. Any other questions for us?
Can I get a copy of this presentation?
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Susan, I have a question. Do you have any data on pent-up deferred maintenance demand cost-wise?
No, we don't. That's not, it's not something that places put into their audits that we would track, and it's not something that we have reached out to our group to ask about. I was thinking about this as we've talked about it, maybe one of the organizations or companies that does like Sightlines or somewhere might have something on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Patrick. We enjoy the update every year, and thanks for taking the time and putting this presentation together.
Happy to, and great to see you all.
Now I'd like to ask everyone to please turn to tab 5 for a report on the operating and construction fund statements and disbursements. And I'd like to ask Brian to please give the report for December 23 and January 24.
Thank you, Josh. The authority concluded the year with a preliminary unaudited net income in the amount of 1.7 million, based on year-to-date revenues of 4.3 million and expenses of 2.6 million. Year-to-date revenues were 455,000 more than projected, primarily due to higher than expected interest income based on the rising interest rate environment, offset by lower than expected initial fees due to the delays in closing the HEFT and HEDI grant programs. Operating expenditures for the year 2023 are currently under budget by 841,000, primarily due to staff vacancies, the timing of expenditures related to the pension and OPEB valuations, and lower overall expenses for professional services and attorney general fees. And for January, the authority concluded with a month-to-date net operating income in the amount of 381,000 based on revenues of 585,000 and expenses of 205,000. Month-to-date revenues were 29,000 more than projected due to the timing of investment income, and operating expenditures for the first month of the year were under budget by 91,000 due to the timing of expenditures.
Any questions for Brian? Great, thank you, Brian. I'd like to remind everybody that our next regularly scheduled meeting is on Tuesday, March 26, 2024, and that meetings will continue to be conducted via Zoom until further notice. I'd like to request a motion to adjourn.
Josh, before you do
Okay.
that, if I could step in, we need to approve the operating construction fund.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Is there a
problem.
motion? I'll move the motion accepting Brian's reports. Is there a second?
Second, Lewis.
Second by Lewis. Thank you. Cheryl, please read the roll.
Josh Otis,
Yes.
Ridgely Hutchinson,
Yes.
Luis Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ryan Feeney,
Yes.
Dr. Bridges.
Yes.
All in favor?
Great, thank you. And now I'd like to request a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Rich, I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. Meeting adjourned.